we can begin. Now we're going to do chapter Ayin Tet 79, and I think we can also manage to do half of chapter 80. I'd like to give a brief introduction. Sometimes we forget the importance of Tehilim, how special it is to learn Tehilim, to say it on a daily basis, because it's a powerful prayer. It's not just a composition of songs. It does contain a lot of prophecies, and the intent, it is intended for us to be able to express ourselves using the words that were composed for us in the past. In other words, even though these are words being communicated by the prophet, by David HaMelech, as he saw it, as he said it, but it was written down for us to say, whether it is that we are in a situation similar to what David was, or for us to remind ourselves that there's a powerful prayer that can be said at various times in order to be able to achieve something. The most important achievement of all is a connection with Hashem. So, in these chapters, what we will be seeing is a little bit of a recall of our history, our past, what has happened, what is expected to happen, the good and the bad. I shouldn't really call it the bad, because nothing is really bad. The good and the difficult, the challenging. And when one sees a picture in front of him of the past, the present, and the future, hopefully he will be impressed by the fact that Hashem is the Mashgiach, that Hashem has been taking care of us. He's been the one that's been guiding the entire journey. And not only of the Jewish people, of the entire world. But especially the Jewish people, their role, their mission is very, very much tied to the past, very much tied to what our forefathers went through. It's all not just a family, but a mission that we all share and that we are continuing with by giving over the torch to the following generation. So we have to be very, very familiar with all this and remind ourselves that it's not only important to pray to Him, but also to realize that He's Mashgiach, He's the boss, He's in charge all the time, and He will always be there for us. So by saying these words, hopefully our faith will be reinforced. We will have greater clarity as to what is going on. Some of it is in the future, so it gives us an idea more or less what to expect, what will happen. But more than anything else, these are words that are being expressed to help us say it. Why? Because Hashem doesn't need these words. It is we who need the words. So when we read it, when we say these words, hopefully they will inspire us. We become strengthened as a result of saying these exact words. And for somebody to just compose words on his own is too difficult. That is why we have a Siddur. The prayer book was composed for us by the Anshe Knesset Agdolah in order to help us say in the morning, the afternoon, the evening prayers. Otherwise, what are we going to say? In the olden days, people just went over to a corner and prayed to Hashem as best as they could using their words. But today, people really would have a hard time trying to figure out what to say. Not only don't they have the vocabulary, they don't know where to start. So here, in the same way as in our prayer book, we have powerful words that remind us of who we are, reminds us of our past, reminds us of Hashem being involved everywhere, in every stage of the history, and how we can turn to Him and He actually listens. And hopefully He will listen to our prayers. The segula of this chapter, of chapter 79, is lehamid sonim. If one has enemies and one wants to subdue them, this chapter is very powerful for that. Ayin Tet. מזמור לאסף אלוהים באו גויים בנחלתך טימאו את היכל קודשך שמו את ירושלים לעיים. You're welcome to follow. There's a lot of books here on Tehilim. So this is a psalm that is being composed, being said by Asaph. Asaph was a prophet. He's talking about the destruction of Yerushalayim, the destruction of the temple, and he's asking, amongst other things, that Hashem take revenge. What's the purpose of revenge? It's not what people think. Oh, we're going to get back at them. We're going to get back at him. No, the Torah tells us not to take revenge. But Hashem is taking revenge. Hashem's revenge is very different. It's to even things out. There must be justice. Everything is measure for measure. So it's not that we're taking revenge because we're upset, because we want to punish someone, because we want to hurt them. God forbid. No, that we can't do. We're not allowed to do that. But Hashem takes revenge in order to even things out. That's part of His attribute of justice. It's just that we don't always see it. But there has to be justice. And there will be justice. So that is what Asaf is asking for. Don't postpone it. We want to see it. We want to see it sooner than later. Especially for something that happened that was so terrible, something so painful. The destruction of Yerushalayim, the destruction of our temple, the exile of the Jews. And it's not so much only that the temple was destroyed, it's that they made fun of us, that they ridiculed us, that they showed no respect whatsoever for the holy or for God. So it's a very, very serious problem. This Chilul Hashem, this desecration of God's name, this disrespect. Till when will this go on? As you know, throughout history, there have been miracles occasionally, where people were able to see clearly the hand of God. But recently, even though there are always miracles, it appears as though God is not performing the same miracles as He did in the past. That is because there's something called a hester panim. God's face is concealed. It is a lot darker today, if we can use the word dark, because the light of Hashem shines everywhere. If people would only observe the creation, if the people would observe His handiworks, if people would learn from history, they would see the light of Hashem. They would see it shining. But today there's a lot more darkness that makes it more difficult to see that light. Not that the light is dimmer in any way. The light is the same light, but there's more darkness in the world. There's more heresy. People are not so focused anymore on faith and religion, so it becomes more difficult for them to actually connect to it. People have become more materialistic. So there's a lot of reasons why all this darkness is out there that doesn't let us see the miracles. But miracles still happen. But we're asking Hashem for open miracles because of the darkness. We want to see it, hopefully in our lifetime. The big question about this chapter, especially the first verse, is why does he say that this is a psalm? In other words, he's happy, he's singing. Mizmor. This should be a kinah. This should be something to mourn about, to wail, not mizmor. You talk about the Khurban, you talk about the destruction. So the commentaries explain that Asaf is telling us Hashem took His anger on the stones, on the building of the Bet HaMikdash, and not on the people. He could have killed the people. There could have been a lot of loss of life, much more than there was. But instead, He took it out on the building, on the stones, on the wood. So that is the song, that Hashem's anger went on the building and not on the people. So what did the Goyim do? Even though this is in the future, for us it's in the past. What did they do? They came in. So they invaded the land. They've invaded your inheritance, the nations. Timeu techal kodshecha. They defiled your holy sanctuary, in other words, the temple. Samut Yerushalayim le'iyim. And they basically turned Yerushalayim into a heap of rubble because of the destruction. So it's telling us, look, it's not that they just invaded the land. They went beyond that. They destroyed the temple. They caused so much destruction all over the place. All of this is midah keneged midah. All of this, as we will see, is measure for measure. In other words, the fact that they went in and they did what they did is not just something that happens by chance. It's not something that they just decided on doing. It's all control from Shamayim. How much they can do harm, what exactly they will achieve, that's up to Shamayim. They decide how much to give them, how much permission do they have. What they do have free will, however, is to exaggerate a little bit. Exaggerate not in the amount of damage, but in how they deal with it. That they made fun, that they trampled on people. As we will soon see, that those people who they killed, they didn't even bury. So, on the one hand, they do have some free will, and they're held accountable for that. But we must remember that everything is midah keneged midah. That if people suffered a certain fate, it's because min hashamayim, they allowed certain things to happen. If min hashamayim, if from heaven they would not agree with something, it will not happen. And I'm going to give you an example soon. The fact that this was a very, very harsh, very, very severe decree shows that the attribute of justice was very, very strong. To destroy the temple, the house of Hashem. This is not somebody's business. This is not just something that belongs to an individual. This is something that belongs to Hashem. Besides, something that is, of course, held high by the Jewish people. And ever since that the temple is destroyed, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, is in mourning. That is why we have a powerful prayer for those who wake up at night. The Tikkun Chatzot, to mourn for the Bet HaMikdash, to identify with this. It's a very powerful prayer. Some say that this is also referring to the Greeks, because when we're talking about defiling the holy sanctuary, what comes to mind is the Yevanim. Soon is going to be Hanukkah, and that is what we talk about during Hanukkah, what the Yevanim did. They did not destroy the physical building, they went after the spiritual aspect of it. They wanted to take the Jew, not kill him, but convert him, to teach him a different philosophy. So they defiled the holy. They said, this is nothing, this is not important. And of course, many, many people fell for it, were influenced by them. Not right away, but with time. That's a great danger. It's a danger to the neshama, to one's soul. So all of this took place in one way or another through the various nations that occupied Yerushalayim. But why would they be so disrespectful? Just because they don't believe in it? We must remember that if something is defiled, something is destroyed, perhaps the Jew himself was not as respectful of the same place. Otherwise, why would they go after the building? Why not just go after him? You want him to be your slave? You want to control the land? You can control the land, just leave the temple alone. Why go and destroy such a beautiful place? To break their self-esteem. I mean, people can talk about all kinds of things, the psychology behind it, but there's no psychology here. It's very simple. Hashem is telling us, you were disrespectful of it. You did not treat it properly. So they're going to treat it the same way as you did. And hopefully you will learn from that, what your mistake was. You may not have heard, but about 800 years ago, give or take, there was a very, very tragic incident in France where the authorities there burnt the Talmud. Wagons full of Talmud, of Gemarot, and holy books were burnt. That was a decree. Gather all the Jewish books, especially the Talmud, all their holy books, all their writings. There was no printing press then yet, so everything was handwritten. And it was a tremendous loss. But it was not just a loss, because eventually you can write it again. It was the Chilul Hashem, the desecration of Hashem's name. The total disrespect for something so holy. Why? So there was a big rabbi, a big tzaddik, who made a Sheilat Chalom. A Sheilat Chalom is a question that you can ask at night, that they should reveal to you in a dream the answer to this question. In a dream, the answer will come either as a pasuk, a verse, or something else. And he asked, why did they decree such a terrible decree against the books? He wanted to know, where does this come from? And the answer came back, because the Jewish people were not being respectful of their books. They were not learning those books. They were not treating them with the proper kavod and respect. Comes along this decree, which is unusual, and hopefully woke them up. They did not know what the reason was. He had to ask heaven for them to reveal to him in a dream. But still, we see another example of midah keneged midah, measure for measure. They're letting us know that we're not being Yeshua with the holy, so therefore the Goy will come and show that he doesn't care about it either. נתנו את נבלת עבדיך מחה לעוף השמיים בשר חסידיך לחייתו הארץ. This is very, very painful. They have taken the corpses, the cadavers, the dead people of your servants, and they just left it outside as a ma'achal לעוף השמיים, that it should be food for the birds. בשר חסידיך לחייתו הארץ, and the flesh of the pious, the tzaddikim, was left to rot to the beasts of the earth. In other words, they did not allow them to be buried. Why not? Why not bury them at least? You killed them. Why not bury them? So this was also a punishment mishamayim. Obviously, even though they were wrong in doing this, it's enough that you killed them, not allow them to be buried. So even though that was wrong and they're going to be punished for that, the fact that an individual was left exposed and not buried is mishamayim. There must be some reason for it. We are told that in order for an individual to be buried, especially in a good spot, not just anywhere, one has to have enough merits. So when there are not enough merits, it could happen that somebody would just be left without burial, stuck somewhere until they eventually find it. There are many, many stories that I can share with you, but I'm only going to share with you one. An example of how even the burial makes a difference. Many of you perhaps don't remember, but in the 1980s, I think it was, there was an Aeromexico flight that left Mexico City to Los Angeles. And somehow there was a bomb on the plane, I think, and it exploded. And everybody on board was killed. So what happens to a plane when it explodes mid-air? Very little is left of it. Go find the bodies. There was a Jewish woman and her daughter, I believe, on that flight. And of course, authorities went all over the place to try to find whatever they can. They couldn't find her. She came in a dream to one of her neighbors in Mexico City. And she told the neighbor, they're not going to find my body or my child's body until all my mezuzot in the house are checked. And I can tell you right now that the one at the entrance to the kitchen and the one to the dining room is not kosher. Those mezuzot have to be replaced. An incredible dream. So this neighbor immediately went to a friend of mine who knows how to check mezuzot, and he, sure enough, found that those two were not good, and he immediately replaced those two. As soon as those two mezuzot were replaced, the telephone rang in someone's home in Mexico, I guess a relative of that woman. The bodies have been found. Once the bodies were found, I guess somebody made a phone call to members of the community to come and attend the funeral of this lady and her child. It was a very big funeral. What happened just now? She was saying, this lady who had been killed, that they won't allow us to be buried. They won't find our body until those mezuzot are replaced. In other words, she did not have enough merits that her body should be found because of those two mezuzot. Once they were replaced, everything was okay. She still, unfortunately, was not spared of that accident, but at least she had the merit of being buried in a Jewish cemetery. Now you want to hear what's more incredible? When the mezuzah was opened to see what was wrong with it, some of the letters of the words "Leman yirbu yemechem v'imei benechem" were erased. That is the verse that talks about that your life and the life of your children should be long, that you should live for many years. Some of those letters were erased. What do we know? Just one of many stories where you see not only does that the soul continues to survive in the afterlife, they appear in a dream sometimes and they tell us, what's going on, what's necessary, in this case for them, to find peace, to be buried. So even though we're talking about something that Hashem here is the one that's orchestrating, the Goyim who perpetrated this will still be punished because they overdid it. They did a lot more than they were asked to do. The question, however, is about the word avadecha. If we're talking about individuals here who were sinners, that is why they got killed, why call them your servants? The commentaries all say, don't forget that even if someone was a sinner after he died, especially he died because he was Jewish, it's a kapara for him. He's completely atoned and he's now called avadecha, he's now called your servant. So somebody may not have been a good person during his life or may have done something very, very wrong. If he dies an unnatural death, especially an unnatural death, then that unnatural death is a kapara, is an atonement for his sins. And he's once again called a servant of Hashem. Pasuk Gimel, Shafchu damam kamayim serivot Yerushalayim ben kover. They spilled their blood like water. There were many such incidents that lots of blood was running down the street around Yerushalayim. Ben kover, there was no one to bury, not even the bones. So again, it describes to us this type of scene, very, very, very painful scene that unfortunately has repeated itself more than once in the history of the Jewish people in various locations in the world. The question is, till when will this go on? So after describing to us what happened or what will happen in the first and second temple era, he goes on to say that not only were the Jewish people's home destroyed, not only were they exiled, Hayinu cherpa l'shchenenu lag v'keres l'svivotenu. We became the object of cherpa, shame, disgrace to our neighbors. Lag v'keles, lag means they ridiculed us, they made fun of us, they made jokes about us. Keles, they talked about us in a very, very belittling way. So we were the talk of town, as they say in English. Everybody talked about it. They make all kinds of jokes, even today. You think this is for nothing? This is also Nashamayim. What is it meant to accomplish? Now, some people don't get the message. Some people say, this anti-Semitism must stop. These people are prejudiced. Time after time we hear this in the news, where a lot of people say, oh no, that's terrible that these people, the Jewish people, are being accosted, are being persecuted, are being killed. As recently, what happened. Everybody's talking about it, and some people, of course, are concerned about it, and rightly so. We have to do whatever we can to educate people not to hate, to be tolerant of other people's views and religions, beliefs, and so forth. That's true. But don't just blame anti-Semitism. Don't blame bigotry, hatred. That doesn't accomplish anything. Blame yourself. What is Cheshbon HaNefesh all about? What is self-examination all about? What is introspection all about? Why isn't anybody mentioning that? When something happens to you, it is clear. Our religion teaches it. We know it from kindergarten, approximately. You have to ask yourself, Hashem, why? And try to do something about it. We may never know the answers, of course not. But at the very least, we have to begin to we have to examine our deeds. All the prophets talk about it. Everybody's just ignoring what the prophets said. Oh no, the prophets, that doesn't apply today. Today we have the United Nations. We have other recourses. that we can resort to. It's not true. That's what the prophet is teaching us here. This is something that we need to adapt, something that we need to apply. Nothing has changed. And what is he asking? Adma Adonai te'enaf lanetzach tivar kemosh kinatecha. Until when, Lord, will you be angry forever? And your jealousy will burn like fire. Just a description of the anger of Hashem, how upset he is. But how long does this have to be? Why does he ask such a question? Isn't he a prophet? That's because this long diaspora, this long exile that we're in, not even the prophets know till when it's going to be, how long it will last. So he's asking, how long can this go? When there's so much pain, and when nothing has happened to take away all that pain. Your glory is still not restored. The temple is still not being rebuilt. They're still shaming us, ridiculing us. Until when will this go on? Now, the ridicule, the disrespect, the shaming, the rabbis tell us that some of it has to do with the fact that the Jew was disrespectful of his synagogue. For example, people who spoke at a time that they should not speak. Talking during the prayers is disrespectful. Many temples, therefore many synagogues, were destroyed by fire because of this, in trying to figure out what happened. Why did this place get burned down? Instead of blaming someone, the rabbis, the ones who were able to look into it a little bit deeper, said it was because many synagogues were not careful enough, were not respectful enough, not to talk in the middle of the prayer, not to talk in the middle of the reading of the Torah. It's a holy place. Treat it that way. If not, then it doesn't deserve to stand. God forbid. But that's what happened. In other words, there's always a connection to something that we did wrong. Nonetheless, the Navi asks, until when does this have to continue? That the enemy should be so happy in thinking that, here, the Jew is going to be downtrodden and nothing's going to happen to them. Until when do they have to think that way? All right, so now we turn to the enemy. Pasuk Vav, verse 6 says as follows. Shvoch hamatcha lagoyim asher lo yeda'ucha b'mamlachot asher b'shimcha lo korah. This may sound familiar to you because we say it on Pesach, during the Saturday night. Pour your wrath, hamatcha means wrath, similar to anger, upon the nations that do not know you, b'mamlachot asher b'shimcha lo korah, and on the kingdoms that do not call your name. There's a lot such kingdoms, a lot such nations and countries who don't recognize God, don't show any respect. Take all that wrath and anger and pour it there. Why? Because even though it's true that the Jewish people may have been guilty of doing the wrong things, but they've always repented, they've prayed, they've asked forgiveness. From time to time, we see that in their prayers, even though they may not have been consistent, even though they still continue to make mistakes, and they still haven't corrected all their wrongs, but have mercy on them. Those enemies have never turned to you, never believed in you, never called out to you. So if anything, anger should be directed there more than here. Now remember what I said in the very beginning. Does Hashem have to hear this? Hashem knows this. We need to say this to ourselves. We need to read this. We need to ask these. These are words that are being composed as a favor to us, that we should ask Hashem continuously for this, because as we say these words, we will hopefully change. That's the importance of saying Tehilim. That's the importance of praying, especially if one is focused and understands the words that he's saying. Hopefully this will affect him to become more humble, realize that he must correct his ways, and say, yes, maybe it's my fault. In other words, he should include himself in the blame of why the galut, the exile, has taken so long. Why should you direct it over there? Because Ki achal et Yaakov et Naveu eshamu. They devoured, achal, to devour, to eat, to consume. They devoured Yaakov, Jacob, with Naveu in his abode, his place of living, eshamu, they desolated it. So he's talking about the Jewish people, he's talking about Yerushalayim, he's talking about the land of Israel. But what is he adding over here? I believe that what he's adding over here is that Ki achal et Yaakov, that's a very interesting word to say, achal and Yaakov, achal, to devour. They've been after us. Don't think that this has been only in the past. This is going on. This is ongoing. Achal et Yaakov. Many places, many countries, they didn't have equal rights, the Jewish people. They were not citizens. They were mistreated. There were conspiracies against them. Plots. There were plots against them. And they were thrown out, kicked out from place to place. So even though Naveu means his home, the Temple Mount, which is still not rebuilt, it could also mean any sanctuary. It could mean any place where we were, that we did not have it easy. So he's saying, direct that anger towards them who did not allow us to focus on our service to Hashem. They made it more difficult for us to be observant. You know how many countries today would like to outlaw shechita? You cannot slaughter an animal, that's too cruel. Instead, shoot it with a bullet. That's better. Electrocution, that's even better. They don't realize that shechita, the slaughter, the way we do it, is actually the fastest, quickest, and painless way of slaughtering an animal. And let's outlaw circumcision. Why? Because you didn't ask the baby. Oh, sometimes, these people have nothing better to do. They're bored. They wake up one morning. So what are we going to decree today? Oh, no kosher food. Why? Because you're setting yourself apart. I don't know, some excuse. We don't want to have division. We want to all be one people. Oh, some excuse. Now we know that that's all in Hashemayim too. But these people are not thinking that way. They are actually want to hurt someone else because of their beliefs. So that's always been around, and it's very difficult to re-educate, retrain people that, this is not nice what you're doing. You're not being tolerant. People have their own beliefs, and sometimes if they're not after the truth, which is most of the time, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. And if they are in power, these people who think this way, in a corrupt way, then a lot of people are going to suffer under them. So that's what he's saying. They've been continuously after the Jewish people. Therefore, the Navi says, "Al tizkor lanu avonot rishonim, maher yikademunu rachamecha kidalonu meod." Very important verse here, very important idea, that he says, do not recall former sins. What happened in the past is already the past. Even though it is true that we have not corrected everything from the past, but Hashem, don't look at that. We're asking for your mercy to come swiftly towards us, because we have fallen very low. We have very few merits. He's seeing that the future is very bleak. Bleak meaning that there will be a lot of people that will become very distant from their tradition. They will be unaware even what it means to be Jewish. They will have very few merits. So don't prolong this. Don't say, well, you still have baggage from the past that needs to be dealt with. No. We can't wait anymore. We're very, very low. We have sunk very, very low. We have very few merits left. So don't remember the past. Use the attribute of mercy. Ozrenu Elohei Yishenu al devar kevod shemecha v'atzilenu v'chaper l'chadodenu man shemecha. And this verse is also part of our prayer. Very powerful because it teaches us that when we ask Hashem for His help, verse 9, help us, God, of our deliverance, for the sake of your glory, kevod shemecha, the glory of your name. In other words, we're not asking it for us. We're asking it for you, for your sake. Look at your name. Look how people are disrespectful, how they don't care, how they don't believe in you. This is powerful because we're no longer asking something for ourselves, because when somebody asks for himself, in Shemaim they might say, well, who is he to ask for what he's asking? He's not behaving himself. So his prayers may not go anywhere. But when we say, Hashem, please help me find my soulmate. Please help me with source of livelihood. Please help me with this problem. But it's not because of me, not for me. I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for you. How could you be asking for Hashem's sake? Because Hashem wants us to get married. It's not that we're being selfish here. So if you direct the entire prayer that this is for His honor, Hashem, redeem us, take us out of this place. Not because we want to leave, not because we want to go back. Take us out because we want to see your glory restored. We want to see your temple. We want to be servants of Hashem in the right place. So we're directing the whole prayer to Him, for His sake. That will make a difference. Those kinds of prayers are much more effective. They have a better chance of being heard. And that's what he's saying over here. In other words, help us al devar kevod shemecha, for your sake, and save us or spare us, atzilenu, and chaper chatotenu, and pardon our sins, leman shenecha, for your sake. So the pardoning of the sins is a very significant idea here as well, because what he's saying is that all of the troubles that we've had and all the pain and suffering, in the end is for our benefit, for our good, because that atones for our sins. So Hashem, allow all that we have suffered, all that we have experienced, to serve as a kapara, leman shemecha, for your sake, so that we can be redeemed sooner than later. So this is a significant point, because in order to bring about kapara, sometimes Hashem needs to cleanse us with pain and suffering. And we're asking Hashem, help us accomplish that kapara slowly. We don't want, of course, too much pain and suffering. But let it happen that should be sufficient, so that you don't have to recall the fact that there's still old avonot. Leave those alone. And let the suffering that has taken place all these years and generations take care of everything. And they do, of course they do. But they might say upstairs, well, they haven't taken care of everything. Well, when there's an accusation like that, that's when we have a Holocaust, unfortunately. When Hashem sees that there's not that much time left, and He wants to bring the redemption, but they're not doing teshuvah, they're not repenting. So Hashem has to perform surgery. And that's what happens when a lot of people lose their life. There's no time for reincarnations anymore, which would be the normal way of rectification. So here we have various ways that Hashem uses to accomplish this kapara, this fast kapara, because we don't want it to be delayed. Likewise, when we ask for Ozreinu, what are we asking for? That Hashem should continue to help us, that the Hashgacha, that His divine providence should continue to protect us for many, many years to come. Without that, we would never have been able to survive. So once again, here, the one who's reading about this, he's saying, wow, Hashem has helped me in the past, I can turn to Him and ask Him again to help me. I should ask that it should be for His sake, that Hashem's name should be sanctified, that people should see, wow, this is a miracle, there must be a God. So hopefully these words will sharpen our senses, will help us with the awareness that we need to have, and how important it is to connect to Hashem. Pasuk Yud, Lama yomru agoyim ayelohehem yivadav agoyim leinenu nikmat dama vadecha shafuch. Why should the nation say, why should anybody say, where is your God? As many people did during the Holocaust. Where was God? Why should people talk like that? Let it be known. Let everybody know among the nations. And let it be before our eyes. The retribution, nikmat dama vadecha, of the spilled blood of your servants. So here's going back to what he was saying earlier. We need to see this nikmat Hashem. We need to see this revenge. And we want to see it ourselves. We want to be around to see it. A lot of people passed away years ago. They suffered. Are they going to see the revenge? The Zohar says yes, in Tchiyat HaMetim. Or right before the resurrection, right before Tchiyat HaMetim, right before Mashiach comes, they may come back in a reincarnation. And they will see things that they need to see. So that they are convinced that there was judgment made. They have to see that judgment was done. They missed out. They had a hard time understanding why things are the way they are. So this is what he's saying. Let it happen, let it be, that our eyes should see that retribution of all that blood that was spilled. You know how much blood was spilled? So let no one have this excuse, where is your God? Let no one say like that. Let no one talk like that. The greatest nekama will be, of course, what's the greatest revenge? When all those that were killed, and all those that were burnt to ashes in the crematoriums, get up. Tchiyat HaMetim. That is a very important principle in our faith. That there will be Tchiyat HaMetim, the dead will rise. Nothing happened to them. Well, obviously, something did happen. You took away their life, you took away their opportunity to observe the Torah, and you're going to pay for that. But they're not gone, they didn't disappear like many people would want to think. You only live once and that's it. There's nothing left. And that is why we don't cremate anybody after his passing. We bury him. By burying him, we say not only is this vessel, the physical body, so important because it contained the soul with which this human being was able to perform mitzvot. This body will once again rise, even though now it's rotting, it's decomposing. One day it will come back to life. The same way it came when it was a little baby. It was once born from nothing. How did that happen? People say, oh, that happens. That is a big miracle. From nothing, from a little drop, you have an entire human being that can be the President of the United States. From nothing. He came once. He somehow managed to arrive once. Why can't he come back again? Especially if he was here before, he knows his way around. Right? So people don't understand because they don't see it happening every day. I mean, people can just rise in the day, right? They don't see it, so they don't. No, but that's part of our faith. And that's going to be the real revenge. That's a sweet revenge because we will realize that, it wasn't so bad after all. And that is why that will give us tremendous comfort. At that time, of course, when that happens, there will be judgment in the world, and those that perpetrated all the crimes will be punished. Even those that had been dead for a long time will come back in a reincarnation and will be punished as well. Let it come before you in ka. The inka of the asir. Inka is translated in English as the groan. Those who are calling out in pain. Who's groan? The asir, the prisoner. Let it come before you. As befits your greatness, the greatness of your strength. So liberate, liberate those that are condemned to death. So he's talking about in katasir, the groan of the prisoner, and b'nei timuta, those that are condemned to die. And he's asking, let their cry come before you, as befits the greatness of your strength. So who's he talking about over here? In katasir, the prisoner. I believe that this is more Kabbalistic. There's a lot of depth to this, even though some may just say, well, the Jewish people are like prisoners, they're in exile. That may be the literal meaning. There's a lot of holy sparks, the Kabbalah says, that are in prison amongst the impure forces. They cannot come out. They're trapped. So even though it doesn't say that, we're talking about the sparks here, that's the deeper meaning, is that there are people who are prisoners not because it's against their will that they're in prison somewhere. They're simply in that darkness that we described before. They can't come out. It's hard for them to do teshuvah. It's hard for them to see the truth. So their neshama, their soul, is groaning, is asking for help. It wants to come out. It doesn't know how to. So let that come before you. Oter b'nei timuta. those that are condemned to die. In other words, they may be condemned to die, not necessarily physical death, but a spiritual death. People may be lost completely as a result of not having any help from above. So he's saying, Hashem, come to their help and liberate them. Liberate those that are condemned to death. That, in other words, if you don't do anything about it, that's what's going to happen to them. Repay your neighbors, all those around Israel, sevenfold in their bosom, for the disgrace that they showed you, that they disgraced you. What is he adding over here? You already asked for that before. And why does it say Shiv'atayim? Sevenfold. 7? Why not 3, 4? What's so unique about the number 7? I believe that here towards the end of this chapter, and a little bit in the next chapter, he's also insinuating about the 10 lost tribes. The 10 lost tribes are considered as though they're in prison. They don't even know they're Jewish, many of them. They don't realize that they were once part of the Jewish nation. They're completely, today, a separate group from us. But they're still around, they still exist. And I have a whole lecture about that. So we're asking Hashem to awaken them, somehow bring them back, and cause or bring about those that perpetrated the evil against them. Shiv'atayim melchikam, sevenfold. Sevenfold is something Kabbalistic too, because it reminds us of the 7 Sefirot of Hashem, of the attributes of Hashem. And it really means that we're asking Hashem to act in every way possible, with all His midot, with all His attributes, to accomplish this feat. Of what? What feat? Just to punish them? To punish the perpetrators, the ones who brought about this exile, the ones who separated our brothers from us? No. It's asher cherfucha, that they disgraced you. They showed tremendous disrespect towards you in what they did. So we're asking for the nekama, for the punishment to be shivatayim, to be sevenfold, to be complete, that there should be no doubt about it. Why? Why does it have to be complete? Yes, complete, because only then when it's complete will the enemy realize that this is the hand of Hashem. I'll give you an example. Remember the makot on the Egyptians? The plagues? There were 10. Why 10 plagues? Bring one plague and finish this whole the whole thing. What do you need 10 for? So there's a reason why there's this plague and that plague. Everything is measure for measure, right? It has to be so because Hashem knows. He doesn't forget what is coming to them. Plus, the Egyptians weren't the only ones to get the plagues. The Jewish people had to observe them as well, to become impressed. Wow, Hashem controls everything. He's in charge. Look at all those makot. There's lice, and there's frogs, and there's boils. All of this from above. In other words, what the plagues in Egypt accomplished was that Hashem broke off or severed those shackles that the Jews were shackled to the impurity of Egypt. They had a hard time living on their own. Oh, perhaps we should just stay. Why go? We're going to go somewhere better. Hashem had to push them out. Come on, it's time to leave. He had to show that that impurity is worthless, that witchcraft is worthless. He had to break him away. So those plagues in Egypt broke that influence, severed those ties. The Egyptians were somewhat impressed. It didn't help them for too long, but I guess they noticed it. Many of them admitted that's Hashem. But the Jewish people saw it. That was important. So it was not just to punish the Egyptians, it was to impress them and the Jewish people that this is Hashem in charge. So Shiv'atayim, sevenfold, means the same idea. Hashem, we are asking you to act in every way possible with all your midot, your 7 midot, your 7 attributes. In other words, with mercy, with justice, or whatever it may be, to communicate to those who perpetrated all these evil doings to the tribes or to the rest of the Jewish people in the world, that their time is coming to an end. When that happens, then slowly but surely everybody will be awakened to this and realize that Mashiach is coming. So it's not just to take revenge, it's not just to get back at them, it's not just to even it out, even though that's what justice asks for, to even things out. It's more than that. It's to impress upon those who thought that maybe Hashem is not going to do anything about it, to realize, oh, the time is fast approaching. When we see this happening in a greater intensity, then we know Mashiach is around the corner. ואנחנו עמך וצאן מרעיתך נודה לך לעולם לדור ודור נספר תהילתך. And we, your people, the flock of your pasture, will thank you forever and we will recount your praise. We will continuously talk about all these miracles. We will have a lot more to talk about now. Egypt? That was a long time ago. We already spoke about that. Now we will have all the miracles that are occurring in America to talk about and everywhere else. So that's how he finishes this chapter, by saying that one should always recount his personal miracles, and B'ezrat Hashem, when Hashem does many, many miracles with us, we will have more reason to thank him. And that is why we're asking him to do this, to take care of this, the sooner the better. Before we just go on to the chapter, the next chapter, chapter 80, just a few verses, I just want to remind you that the Kabbalists did say that one of the reasons why the exile has been taking for so long, it hasn't come to an end just yet, is because of what we just said, that there's a lot of people who are still stuck or in prison, and Hashem is giving them a chance to do teshuvah, to come out. He wants more people to come to this awareness before he reveals himself. So that's one of the main reasons of why things have taken so long. Chapter 80, which we'll just do a few verses, is also a very important chapter. And this, along with 81, are very helpful. The segula of those chapters is to help people who are struggling with heresy, avodat Tehilim. In other words, hopefully people who are having doubts about faith, they read this verse, they read this chapter, they will be spared from any misgivings. In other words, lebal ya'avod avodat Tehilim, one should not come to worship idols or anything of the like. This is a good chapter. Lamnasech et Shoshanim edut le'asaf mizmor, for the conductor on the Shoshanim, a testimony by Asaph, a psalm. Some say Shoshanim means roses, or a musical instrument that looks like a rose. We've talked about it in the past. Other commentaries say that this is referring to the Sanhedrin, which also went to exile. So he's asking about that, or relating to that group of people, or sages. Or it's talking about the Jewish people who are also compared to roses, how they're surrounded with thorns, but they retain their beauty and their fragrance despite it all. Others say it's a musical instrument. Either one, it's a beautiful way of describing either the Sanhedrin, from where the Torah teachings came out, or the Jewish people as a whole. He's turning to Hashem and talking about how, from the very, very beginning, he was so kind to us. It was clearly a fatherly relationship where he took care of us from the very beginning. So he's saying like this: the shepherd of Israel, listen, Hazina Nohe Katzon Yosef, he who has led us like sheep. Nohe Katzon Yosef, who leads Joseph like sheep. Yoshev HaKeruvim Mofia, appear you who is enthroned in the Keruvim. So he is describing the various stages on which Hashem was with us, leading us, whether it was in Egypt, the desert, Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, which is why he describes it as Yoshev HaKeruvim. I think it's in English, it's pronounced cherubim. I'm not sure. But it means the Aron, it means the ark. So throughout all that time, you have shepherded us, you have led us, like Yosef, meaning either Yosef meaning in Egypt, or meaning like Yosef did when he led the Jewish people during the time that he was the viceroy. And he says the word Ophia, you've appeared. The rabbis tell us about this word that Hashem makes his appearance 4 times. You have the appearance in Egypt, you have the appearance in Matan Torah, when he gave the Torah to the Jewish people, you have the Ophia, the appearance when Gog and Magog will happen, that major war, and you have the Ophia when Mashiach finally arrives right after that. So you have here the appearance of Hashem as a leader taking us out of Egypt, the various stages, and he's asking in the same way that you've done this in the past. Lifnei Ephraim uVinyamin uMenashe orerat givrotecha ulecha leshoat alanu. He's asking that arouse your might before Ephraim, Binyamin, and Menashe, for it's upon you to save us. The rabbis tell us he's describing various episodes in our history that were very difficult for Ephraim, Binyamin, and Menashe. Ephraim and Menashe were the northern tribes, and they had trouble with the northern neighbors. Binyamin, who's Binyamin here? Mordechai. It's the story of Purim, the story of Achashverosh. So he's referencing that. All this is a prophecy. And he's asking that Hashem have pity and help them during their time of need. Elohim hashivenu ve'er panecha v'nivasha. Now you're going to see these words mentioned several times, because it's talking about various stages of the redemption. Verse Dalet. Return us, O God, cause your countenance to shine that we may be saved. Your countenance to shine. Well, in order for Am Yisrael to do teshuvah, good teshuvah, proper teshuvah, we want Hashem, of course, to help us with that. It's not happening by itself so easily. So we're asking for Hashem's help to return us, not just to return to Israel. Hashivenu, that we return to Him, so that that his countenance will shine upon us once again. But we also want that countenance to shine even before, which means that we want him to be pleased with our deeds so that he should help us do teshuvah. So there's 2 ways of looking at this verse. May your countenance shine upon us again after we have done teshuvah. May you help us do teshuvah, right, through the countenance of your face. In other words, that we should be able to come close to you, approach you in such a way that it comes from us and not through pain and suffering, that we have no choice. In this way, we will be helped. So he's asking, Hashem, the God, until when will you fume at the prayer of your people? Which is basically saying, you're not paying attention to them. You're fuming at their prayer, because ever since the destruction of the temple, the prayers are not so easily accepted. It's like the windows are closed, the doors are shut. You need to cry to get through. Tears break through, but just like that, it's not easy. So he's asking for Hashem's help, that our prayers hopefully will get through. Until then, it's a very interesting way of talking about the suffering of the Jewish people by feeding them bread of tears. You fed them bread of tears, he says, verse 6. And you gave them tears to drink in great measure. B'dma'ot shlish. B'dma'ot shlish, even though shlish means 3 times, it means in great measure. But according to the Kabbalah, the word 3 here is an insinuation to the 3 tears that Esav shed when we got the blessings, when Jacob took the blessings, which is this week's parasha, which is interesting. The Zohar says, listen, if you don't behave yourself, Esav has a good claim. Why did you take his blessings? The Zohar says if we don't act properly, then our tears have to extinguish his tears. In other words, the suffering that Yaakov will go through is to extinguish those tears that Esav shed, because he has a claim. So, Echaltem lechem dim'ah, which means basically that we suffered a lot. But why are we suffering? Because in some ways Esav has a claim against us. You could also be talking, according to some commentaries, about the Babylonian, the Persians, the Greeks, or the Egyptians, the various stages where we had tears, in other words, where we suffered. You've made us go through all of that. You have made us the object of strife to our neighbors, our enemies, mak, to themselves. As a result of all that pain and suffering, we always have trouble with our neighbors until today. And they make fun of us. So it seems like it's a repetition of what he said before, but in reality, it's not. There's always something being added. We're headed towards the redemption over here. So he's saying, look, this is what's been going on. This unfortunately has made things worse in some ways, because the Jewish people are having a harder time doing teshuvah. They've struggling with all that shame. Not everybody's strong enough to do teshuvah when people make fun of him. Again, he asks the same words because he's talking about perhaps the 10 lost tribes as well. When he said Ephraim, Menashe, and Binyamin, he also insinuated about the 10 tribes. It's all headed towards the redemption. We want everybody to come back. So he asks again that allow them to do teshuvah as well. Enable them to return to you so that they should be saved. So allow your countenance to shine on us so that we be saved. These last few verses are very interesting because they talk about the Jewish people being a vine. I think we'll just finish with that. Verse 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I'll first translate. You brought a vine out of Egypt. Geffen is a vine. You drove our nations. You drove out nations and you planted us there in the land of Israel. Pinita lefanea v'tashesh sharashea v'tamelei haaretz. You cleared the space for us, and it took root and filled the land. We were established. We built our homes there. Kasu harim tzilav anafei arze'el. The mountains were covered by its shade, and its branches became mighty cedars. In other words, Baruch Hashem, that's what's happening today too. The land is being reseeded, replanted. Even though it was a semi-arid place, almost a desert, you helped us accomplish that too. And then you sent forth its branches until the sea and its tender shoots to the river. You allow us to take over all the way to the Euphrates River. So what's all this all about? The Jewish people are compared to a vine for a variety of reasons. The vine is something that is admired by the entire world because you make from it. You make wine. What do you make from a vine? Wine, a very special drink. So the vine is cherished because of its fruit. The Jewish people are going to be cherished because of their Torah. And the vine, the grape, does not graft itself with others, cannot combine. They're on their own. So as long as we stay on our own, as long as we produce that wine, which is the Torah and the good deeds, as long as we do what we're supposed to do, we will be admired and we will be cherished. That hasn't happened. But Hashem, you've prepared the way for it to happen. You've actually helped us accomplish this. You brought us into the land and you've paved the way, you cleaned up everything. And therefore, we're asking you to continue to be with us so that we can continue to produce, so that we continue to be a light unto the nations. So even though that is the goal, as we're going to see next week, he's going to ask again, but why did it all stop? In other words, we had a beautiful beginning, and B'ezrat Hashem, we will hopefully have it soon again.